Oh, yeah.
She has dementia, advanced dementia.
You know, that's a mental illness. I mean, it really is.
Finance Committee meeting to order for Monday, November 8th, 2021. We have a lot to go through tonight. A couple things, just as we go through these things. You received an awful lot of information on Thursday and Friday of last week, so it's understandable if you didn't get through all the pieces, parts. Though there will be some asks during this meeting that I'll make of the administration. Certainly you will have some questions about the budget. As we always do, I would like to just, discuss, we'll have discussion tonight, but I want to continue the discussion. And then anything that needs further action on the administrative part, we'll ask them to bring things forward to us from here as we go through the budget process over the course of the next 5 weeks. So no different than any other year. There's a lot to go through, and we certainly aren't going to get through all of it tonight. So we've got 3 meetings in 5 weeks to get through it, and I think through a healthy debate on the floor of council as well as sharing information via email, we should be able to get everything wrapped up by the middle of December. So with that, the first item I have tonight is Resolution 13221. That's a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept a Build Ohio water grant and execute contracts. That's coming through water pollution, Mr. James.
I'm going to allow some time for Mr. Cruz to give us a little more information about that. But this is a grant we definitely just want to take advantage of. But go ahead, Denise.
So did you hear the governor gave us a grant of $950,000?
Yes.
This is part of the Build Ohio Water Grant, and it's funded through the American Recovery Plan dollars that the state got. We applied in August for this grant, and we received it. This legislation just allows the mayor to enter into the grant agreement.
Short and sweet. Questions for Denise? I think we probably the worst kept secret for you to come to the microphone for tonight. Mr. James, I'll push it back to you.
One reading, and Ms. Becky Teeter will be the second on that, please.
All right, we will suspend to take a $950,000 grant on a suspended action. That's a good thing. All right, thank you. Next item I have is Resolution 13321. That's a resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into contracts for mowing and other landscape maintenance services for the city cemeteries. This is coming through Public Works. Mr. Schoonover.
Greg's not here, but it's just an annual piece to go out to bid. I think if you reference the budget, there's an increase in the line item for the mowing contracts. We had a discussion about having a hard time keeping some of the contractors through the entire season. And then we're going to work on some legislation for to put some bond stuff in those contracts, and then hopefully with the increase and the bond, we'll get some contractors that are capable of doing the job throughout the entire season. So
Yeah, I understand we had a problem last year. We lost a couple of them, right?
yeah, and then this year for the same thing.
Yeah, so they got to somehow solve that either with money or bonds or bonuses or whatever the case might be. So, yeah. Do you have anything to add, Paul, since Greg's not here?
I would say the lawn care industry is really hurting, as well as a lot of industries, but it's very difficult for these contractors to keep their labor. So we're going to have them solve the problem, because we need to get this done and get it done well. So we're trying.
Very good. What's your pleasure, Corey?
We're requesting 2 readings, and Mr. James will be my second.
Okay.
Can I ask one question?
Well, of course. Sure.
So the individuals, I mean, they're going to be bidding on each cemetery, right? I mean, we're not going to, well, unless they're the least expensive, we're not going out just for one contractor.
No, Forest Rose is divided in 2, and then we have another. I'm not gonna say every cemetery. I think we have some smaller cemeteries. Those contracts have been working out well. So it's the larger ones that we're having an issue with.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yes, we're trying to make it to where a viable company can do it realistically with their manpower and equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Seeing none, we will do 2 readings with Mr. James as the second. Thank you, Corey. Next item I have is Resolution 13421. That's a resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for inspection services coming through water pollution. Mr. James.
Thank you, Chairman Stowe. Denise, do you want to, oh, there. I didn't see you, Stephen, go ahead. Stephen Wellstead will give us a little more information on that one for us.
So this resolution is for our resident representative, project representative, Ben Warner. We've used him for years, I think over 15, almost 20 years now. We've used him on projects. He's currently working on our Lawrence Street improvements project that's currently happening. And that project's going to go through 2023, the summer of 2023. And we're going to keep him on that project is the plan. So this contract will cover his services for next year.
Annual piece. Your timing and second?
It will be 3 readings, and Ms. Becky Keener will second that one as well, please.
All right, assuming no other questions, we'll go to 3 readings on Resolution 134. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you.
Next item I have is Resolution 13521. That's a resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an engineering contract. Again, coming through water pollution. Mr. James.
And Stephen, I'm glad you didn't leave the podium, so if you've got some more information on this one for us, we'd appreciate it.
Sure, similar legislation, yearly contract we do with Hull & Associates, an engineering firm. They provide us with inspectors on capital improvement projects, sometimes private projects that have infrastructure that needs to be inspected that our internal folks can't handle. So again, this would cover us for next year up to $100,000 as needed.
Timing and second?
3 readings, and Mr. Hall will be my second.
All right, so we'll go 3 readings with Mr. Hall as the second on 135. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Next item I have is Resolution 13621, and that is the 2022 city budget. So, where to begin? You got a copy of the budget on Friday. So there's an awful lot of ground to cover there. There's, my goodness, 2,500 lines in that budget, so there's a lot of work to do. I will be creating a budget bridge that will compare the 12/31/21 budget line to the 2022 ask. I will send that to you when I get it completed and make sure that it's completely correct. I've finished the general fund and the special revenue side, but I'm not done with the engineering or the enterprise funds. I will shoot that to all the council in Excel format, so you can slice and dice and cut and do whatever you want 100 different ways to Sunday. I suspect we'll get a second cut of the budget in a couple weeks and then a final budget in 3 weeks following that.
Assuming there's any changes.
Assuming there's any changes. If there weren't, that would be the first time ever, probably most likely in the history of any city on this planet, but I digress.
Well, we're one day into it, and I haven't gotten any yet, so.
Yeah, don't spike the football yet.
Yeah.
Not quite ready for that. So, as you're going through that, Mayor, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to kind of go through the key provisions that you provided to council. Talk about some of those things, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, let me pull it out here. Probably the biggest news is safety services. That budget is up 3.1 million over the 2021 budget, not the actual expenses, because we won't know that till the end of the year. And that's with full staffing of 84 firefighters and 73 police officers, plus the new medics and cruisers that have already been approved and ordered, and, you know, who knows what the lead time is. I think we expect one medic maybe March, April, and another one late summer, early fall. Both departments will have some significant carryovers in 2046, 2047, and 2051, which are the dedicated income tax accounts. It's always an exercise budgeting with Fire has 4 accounts they have to budget out of, police only have 3. So getting expenses and using up all the funds in one account or another, so we're working on that, but after the first of the year, they'll start using out of 20, 46, 47, and 51. There are no wage adjustments for the ASME employees, as we still don't have a contract for 2021, but alone 2022.
Just a
So,
quick question on that. I assume we haven't made any provisions for those increases yet, correct?
Correct.
But it'll likely be retroactive back, I guess, potentially. Yeah.
Subject to negotiation.
Subject to
Yeah.
negotiations, but potentially it could go back that far back. Gotcha.
So we do have fact-finding here in a few weeks.
Okay.
In the month of November, so that ruling, it might not even come back till the first of next year.
Okay, and we'll just act on it when it occurs. Okay.
Yep. The Clemens Nelson recommendations for compensation adjustments for management and non-union employees have been implemented in this budget. The new environmental engineering department is included in the internal service fund section of the budget on page 42, and that's taking Denise Cruz out of stormwater and putting her into environmental engineering to more closely reflect all the duties that she is assuming with the new water treatment plant, the upgrade of the Upper Hocking Water Pollution Control Plant, the rehab of the Lawrence Street plant, possibly a new compacting station at sanitation, and any other thing that comes up, especially with grants. It's raining money, and as you know, the infrastructure bill just passed, and there's billions and billions, even the state of Ohio, for water and water pollution control projects, so.
Just a quick point of order, that budget for the environmental engineering is completely contained within the enterprise funds
Yes,
supporting it, correct?
It will be paid for out of the enterprise funds, so money will be transferred from enterprise. Based on actual hours, at least initially estimated hours that she thinks she's gonna dedicate to each department, but as the year goes by, it will be closer to actual hours.
Okay.
The sidewalk replacement account is in the engineering budget for $150,000. And one thing that may be new to everybody is, so out of the 2.2% income tax, 1.2% is dedicated to safety forces, and there's 1% that goes to the general fund, and it's divided up into some additional little pots. In the past, it was 0.96 to general fund, 0.2 to capital improvements, 0.1 to parks improvements, and 0.1 to something else, which is escaped. I'm sorry, cemetery fund. So we are proposing to change that to 0.94 for general fund, 0.5 for capital improvements, and again, 0.1 for parks improvement and 0.1 for cemetery improvement. So that will put something in the neighborhood of $575,000 into a capital improvements fund dedicated to that, which can be used going forward as we do some of the capital items that need to be done around the city, like the city hall, rehab, the new firehouse, et cetera. But that would be planned to accommodate debt service in any bonding that we might do for those 2 projects going forward.
So let me just offer a quick, he's talking about ordinance 4621, so, and it's actually general funds 93, parks is 1%, cemetery 1%, and capital improvement 5. He said 94. I just wanted to clarify that.
Under code enforcement, we've added another code enforcement officer to request of Councilman Schoonover. And as is typical, accounts 60, 19, 23, 25, 26, 29, and 30 are basically reserve funds for water and water pollution control and stormwater for debt service and future projects, and they typically aren't budgeted until after the end of the year because carryover from 2021 will automatically be budgeted in 2022, and we won't know exactly what the carryover is until the end of the year. So Denise typically brings those forward soon after the end of, at the beginning of the new year. The Parks Board, for various reasons, has not approved their budget yet, but they're meeting on Thursday to do that. The treasurer's budget, and I don't know if you want to go into that separately, Tom.
Yeah, we'll talk about that during the ordinance.
Okay, all right. And that's pretty much the highlights. I don't know if there's anything I missed. I tried to catch everything in this memo, so everybody would have the weekend to think about it before tonight, come up with a lot of questions.
A lot to digest in that first dump at
It is.
budget time, so.
It's been many weeks working on it, so I
Sure.
know it's a lot. Yeah.
Sure. Any initial questions here for the administration to kind of start this off, or, you know, any questions you might have? And if anyone wants to add any people to the city, like Mr. Schoonover was able to do, you all get to pick someone.
Yeah, thanks for
Take anybody
sticking,
away.
thanks for sticking my name on that suggestion. I can explain my thought if that
Sure, go right
helps.
ahead. That's
So,
awesome.
in the 4 years I've been sitting here, I think the very first time I ran, part of that was, let's try and increase the size of the code enforcement department. And even in the 4 years I've been sitting here, most of the complaints that I get are code related. I was just having a conversation with Erica, so a lot of the stuff that we do at the Humane Society kind of puts us in overlaps with code enforcement. So we're either calling them or they're calling us. So, you know, in a conversation we were having with, you know, I think it's an opportunity to, you got 2 part-time people and then the director. But, you know, 1 day a week at this point, every Thursday, they're spending an entire day cleaning up homeless camps or discussing stuff with those people and trying to put them in the right direction. And I thought it's another opportunity to maybe free up Erica a little bit. So we have so many, Linda's done a fantastic job in getting different grants and things like that with community development. So I think it gives an opportunity, you know, going back to a lot of the complaints I hear about, they're really code related or property code related, to maybe free her up to actually spend some time working with that other department and maybe come up with something that's, I don't want to call it a neighborhood revitalization type of program, but I think it frees up some time for them to work on it. And I think another code officer kind of shows that we're, you know, putting forth that extra effort to handle some of those neighborhood issues.
Very good. Any questions for Corey or any questions for the administration? Okay, so there's a lot to digest here in the budget. Christina has been combing through it here since I arrived. The only thing I would ask, if you want to meet with the administration and ask questions, feel free to do that. If you want to send questions to me and have me send them to the administration, I'm happy to do that. Remember, this is a 5-week dialogue to get to the point where on December the 12th, I believe, or 14, whatever day it is, we will hopefully be in a position to be comfortable with the budget we have before us. A couple things, another thing I sent you the medical costs because I was kind of surprised at what the costs were, but I sent you the table for what the family cost is and what the individual cost is. So when you're looking at the budgets and those numbers kind of jump off the page, I wanted you to have that in front of you. So I sent that to you this afternoon as well.
And we were fortunate this year that our increase in health insurance is a very modest increase.
That's good.
Compared to others that I've been reading about.
Well, and just look at the cost of anything right now. So in that case, I think we're fortunate that.
And I would add that most members of council do come in and meet with me, you know, during the next 5 weeks, and I'd reiterate that I'm very happy to do that, and just get into line issues, general questions, or whatever. So
Yeah,
as usual,
yeah.
don't hesitate to call.
Yeah, I would share if you send the mayor a note and offer a couple times to have a conversation. he hops on the phone and calls, and we have a conversation. So anyway, are there any other questions that we can answer at this point? That's kind of the process we're going to follow. Similar as we start talking about pay ordinances when we get to that part of tonight's meeting. So with that, then I'm going to move on. So Mrs. Bobbitt will be the sponsor of the city budget. Mrs. Kreitz will be the second, and that will go 3 readings. All right, so moving on. Next item is temporary resolution 13717. That's a resolution to create a new fund for the Environmental Engineering Fund 7030 and set up expense and revenue accounts for 2022. You already heard all about that department. It's a case of moving Denise into a appropriately defined and funded department that basically identifies truly what it is she'll be doing for the near future. So we're creating the expense accounts and the revenue accounts for that. We're going to suspend on that tonight. And Mrs. Bobbitt, I'm going to ask you to be the second on that.
Thank you.
Any questions on that one? Relatively self-explanatory. Whoops, thank you. All right. Turning the page. We are now into the ordinances. All ordinances tonight are specific to pay for 2022 and pay ranges for 2022 for the city. Ordinance 3921, that is the ordinance for the Information Technology Administrator for the Office of the Clerk of Courts, which is Valita Stone. They have always paid this position out of their funds, and it has its own singular pay ordinance. So is there any questions on this one? You know, we might, Mr. Rule, pass this one early since it's a safe one. All right. Last time I heard that was in a deposition. All right. So that's for the IT administrator in the clerk of court's office. We'll plan for 3 readings. If we get, if our boat floats, we might do it next meeting. All right. Second on that will be, all the odd ones will be Mrs. Bobbitt. All the even ones will be Mrs. Kreitz. Next one is ordinance 4021. That is the ordinance for the municipal court management and professional personnel. And then we also have 41, which is the municipal court judicial and probation personnel. I see we have the judge and Jackie out there. Would you like to address council as to why we are now segregating these out?
First of all, you've never seen me without Jackie. There's a reason for that, I figured it out.
Well, no, I've gone through Tim Hortons and I see you
Well,
sitting
Tim
there.
Hortons,
She's not there.
but anywhere I can get in trouble.
Well,
I think I learned that a year or two ago. I had to adjust some funds, and Tamara Bartek was here. And I said, Tamara, why are you here? Jackie's out of town. Oh, so, and I realized everywhere I go, Jackie goes, but that's fine. I stay out of trouble that way. I just feel like I should come. You're giving me money. I should show up once in a while in case you have any questions for me.
we don't. I'm just curious why we were pulling this out of the normal budget.
Well, I think our pay is not part of the normal budget anymore. I think we pulled it out last year, and we're in a different pay. We're not in the steps and everything anymore. The court.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
Okay.
Okay. So,
All right.
but other than that, a lot of the, we appreciate your support, and our specialty dockets are mostly funded by grants. The Fed, I think, gives me $750,000 for drug court and our veterans court. Mr. Hall, I did come prepared this time because either last year or the year before you asked me the question and I wasn't ready. Veterans court has 14 people. Mental health court 12, drug court 15, and special abilities has 3, which we'll have a 4th one next week. Special abilities is unfunded. There are no funds for that. It's in conjunction with the County Board of DD, and we just do it because we can. So
Should we now thank Jackie for preparing you?
Jackie gives me everything, numbers. Yeah, all I do is come up here and talk. So, yeah, but I know my role in this, so.
Mr. Hall.
Just a couple quick comments. Specialized dockets are a really effective way to process people that have behavioral health challenges, and we have one of the finest sets of behavioral health dockets in the entire state. I think the judge has done
I appreciate
a great
that.
job. And then a question for the judge. Judge, how many creams and sweet loaves do you drink in your small?
Yes, I know. I have 3 creams or 3 sweeteners and 1 cream, and I get a lot of.
More like 6.
No, but the 3 sweeteners, I get enough grief from my staff about that, yeah, so. But, and also, I will have a new colleague after the first of the year. Judge Landefeld could not run again. As he sent out the email, he is, what did he say he was? Statutorily senile. Because once you turn 70, you cannot run again as a judge. So we will have Mr. Olam, who's already made an impression on the Supreme Court, because I got an email the other day congratulating me on working with Robert T. Olam. So, yeah, he's already going by a different name, so, yeah, it works well. Use somebody else's name, that way nobody knows who you are. Yeah, so, but I appreciate it. Again, my door is always open. If you ever have anything, feel free to call Jackie, and then she'll get you to me, because they don't let me take calls because it has to go through Jackie. So, all right, but
Judge, thank you
again,
very much.
anything you need, let me know. Thank you.
Very much. Jackie, thank you as well. Appreciate it. All right, so there are your municipal court ordinances, 40 and 41. Moving on to 42, this is the city non-union personnel. We did a lot of work with the study, I'm trying to remember what that's called, the Clemens Nelson, thank you, study. So you see, it looks like we landed on letters instead of numbers. So, and then there are some ads, there is an ad in here for code enforcement. Are there other ads that I may have missed? I don't see any. Any questions to the administration on the non-union pay ordinance? And again, we have 5 weeks to get everything answered here. So if you don't see something tonight, you can certainly, bugle it up the flagpole, so to speak. Yes, sir, Mr. Matlin.
Treasurer.
And I'm probably gonna make a couple edits, but there was discussion about pro pay for people, and with this ordinance, it gets rid of the pro pay, because they basically, I remember the discussion, they should already have a college education just to get the job, so we're not paying them the 30, but I noticed in the municipal court, there's still a pro pay portion in that for, and I don't even know who that covers. So I don't know if there was a discussion about within the courts to do away with that or not do away with it, or make it the same.
Sure.
The courts, their compensation system is completely different from the rest of them, and the judge and Jackie and the other appropriate personnel down there handle their compensation, so, whether they want to follow our example in the future or not, it's up to them, but they've all, for, at least since I've been mayor, they kind of do their thing.
Right, I get it.
And if I may, just real quick, as part of I know you guys did an evaluation, we weren't part of that. In fact, I didn't even really know what was going on until I spoke a couple of weeks ago, so we weren't part of any of the reevaluation of our staff.
Further comments or questions on 4221? All right, moving on to 43, which is the city management and professional personnel. I think our ads here are building manager, is that an ad? And environmental engineer, but of course that's an offset from stormwater.
So the building, that's just a title change, no additional, we just,
Oh, I
per
see.
Clemens Nelson, we just changed the title of the
Oh,
building,
gotcha.
certified building department.
Gotcha.
When it says building manager, I might want to put in there certified building manager if I submit a star version of that.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd make
Right.
more sense.
Yes,
That's Jeff.
yes.
All right. Any questions on the management and professional pay ordinance? Moving on to 44, which is the transit pay ordinance. And again, the transit department gets a whopping $73,000, I think, from the city, period. Everything else is grants and contracts and fares, correct? And I think did we bust this out last year, the transit pay ordinance?
So we did bring it out, but as you notice, this is a significant change from last year's ordinance. And because of the market, because of our struggles, finding operators to do our routes. We have adjusted some of the ranges as proposed here. We ask that you support this because I think this puts us in the market. And we have our director and our assistant director here tonight, and we've talked much to Corey about it as well. But we're trying to get these jobs in a market to where we can retain our drivers. We have lost several, two to the school district because, you know, they're part-time, but they're full-time. And we're not trying to match necessarily everybody, but you'll look at that, you'll see. We took, we're making 2 full-time positions. We got 3 lead operators. We used to have 2, so what we've done is we made that 1 lead operator a safety and training coordinator. That's a really good, really important position. Very proud of that person there, and so that's a full-time position. She's already been that way, but we're gonna create 2 other full-time positions in the operator and try to be able to cover our routes a little bit better there.
Are we seeing any looseness in the labor market to where we're getting more candidates?
Well,
I don't think so. So you may be aware that we recently curtailed our operating hours to cut them off at 5 o'clock on all of our city loops, and we're terminating our Rickenbacker loop just because we don't have anybody to drive. So we're hoping that some increases, which by the way are all funded by state and federal grants, will help hire some more drivers so we can reinstate the service that everybody's been accustomed to.
Okay. All right, any questions on the transit piece? Yes, Dr. Rule.
Are so like the Rickenbacker loop, is that permanent or just until?
As of right now, it's permanent cut.
Is that the only permanent cut currently?
That's our
Everything else is
intention, correct.
temporary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Further questions on the transit? All right, moving on. And the next one I have is 45, 41. This is the elected officials for city council, clerk of courts, and the treasurer. Back a long, long time ago, I want to say, 2011, city council took a 3% pay cut when everyone in the city, except the AFSCME union, was taking zeros. So the plan was to implement, restore that 3% cut over the course of really 6 years. And that happened, I think, in 2013, 2014, 2015, I'm sorry, it would have been 2014, 15, 16, and 17, really 0.5% a year. It's roughly $50 a year for those increases. We then got to the time on council where there was a lot of consternation on council. We had lawsuits going, we had factions, we had all sorts of things. Therefore, I didn't even opt to bring that forward, even though we're talking about $100 over 2 years. It seems like we've had a pretty good year here. So I am suggesting for council that we finally finish that last 1%, which is really 0.5% a year for 2022, going from 9,400 to 9,450, and then getting it back up to 9,500 effective January 1st, 2023, and that will stay until we do analysis in future years for the pay for city council. So that's why you see that, some of you weren't around at the time, that's why you see those really modest $50 increases over the course of two years. And then the clerk of council, none of you sat around here when, and I don't even know if Randall was around. I don't know if Bob was around. I don't know if any of you were around that predated Teresa Sandy as our clerk, but we had a very poor clerk of council, a very not organized. We rarely had paperwork on the night of council. Meeting minutes were months behind, and there was absolutely no organization in the office. We all know, any of you, and most of us around here are old enough to remember MASH and Colonel Blake and Radar O'Reilly, right? And Radar always knew what needed to be done, probably like Jackie Long and Judge Fields, always knows what needs to be done and has it done and ready to be done. Well, That's Clerk Sandy, right there. And, you know, as the city was struggling for money, you know, we couldn't appropriately increase her. I don't think we cut you, we did not cut you during the time the council took the cut, because it was the wrong thing to do. But we didn't raise her either. But then we didn't raise her after that as well. And so I put her through the drill of giving us the time study of what she does. And I hope you all read it, because, you know, as you can see, it's a page and a half. That's Calibre 10 probably. So I can't read it because I'm, you know, effectively blind without my glasses. But I am suggesting that we increase her pay to $12,000, which I don't think is probably still enough for what she does. But what we do have here now, President O'Toole, if you do have to replace her, you have a nice job description. And I think we have an appropriate salary for the clerk of council. So I'm asking for your support and conversation of raising her stipend to $12,000 a year, which I think is appropriate. And I want to thank Mrs. Teener, came to me about a month ago and firmly encouraged me to take a good hard look at it. And she was right. You were absolutely right, Becky. I give you credit.
I was right. You put, oh gosh, what's today? What's this date? We gotta write this down.
It's November the 8th of 2020.
Okay, I'll write that down. Make a note.
Oh, we'll get Bob Campetti to maybe cut that clip out.
Okay.
And we can post it somewhere. So, anyway, questions on this? Oh, then, well, let me go. Well, let's talk about those two first. Do you have any questions on either one of those? Okay, then the treasurer's position. So, a lot of you, much like, you know, predating Teresa as a clerk, we had Gene Ash as a city treasurer a long, long time ago. Gene was very competent in what he did. I believe Gene made $10,000 a year, and he got no benefits whatsoever. Then we went through a couple of treasurers that made some mistakes. We went through some treasurers where we paid Schoenhart and Associates quite a bit of money. I mean, I think we may have paid Schoenhart more in 1 year than we paid the clerk or the salary for the treasurer's position. So just to give you some background. So then we got an opportunity to, you know, have Mr. Wolfinger appointed, and then he ultimately has been elected each time since then. And being a banker and a smart guy, he set himself up, I believe, financially pretty well, to the point where he didn't have to come to the city and ask for truly what he's worth, okay? Because we get way more out of him than what we pay, but we're fortunate to that regard. So he's trying to appropriately plan to be able to leave the treasurer's job and have a succession plan in place. I'm not sure that that's going to work out perfectly, and because we have to set the salary in 2021 for the next 4 years. So, you know, what's going to be a really good plan on Bob's part, I don't know that we can do that, because we could overstate the salary for someone that gets appointed to a position that can get elected but's not capable of doing the job. And I've lived through a couple of treasurers that were that way, and that was problematic. And I think, Trish, you do remember, we have paid consultants to basically run the treasurer's office while we actually were paying the treasurer to make mistakes. So, with that, I talked to Bob about this, and Bob, I don't know, maybe I'll kick it to you, or you want me to just keep blubbering on?
Well, you do a good job.
Well, I know, I'll talk, give me a microphone, I'll talk all night, but, you know, you want to talk about some of your thoughts here, because again, it's, you know, you are trying to leave the city when you determine it's time to leave, you want to leave the city, you know, in a good forward-looking position, and we appreciate that. And I know you and I have talked about the struggles of getting that right, but I'd like you to address council.
Well, I appreciate that, Tom. I'm trying to understand what Judge Landerfeld was saying. When you hit 70, you're senile, is that?
When you hit 70 as a judge, you cannot run again by law.
Oh, no, I understand
So,
that.
yeah, that's what he's saying. Statutorily, they say you're
Constitutionally.
senile.
Constitutionally senile. Well, 70 is an interesting number, because I'm 71, I'll be 72 next year.
That explains a lot.
All righty, I appreciate that. So, you know, I'm not gonna be, I've been doing it for 14 years, and that was kind of my game plan when I retired from the bank. I enjoy what I'm doing, and the city is growing dramatically. The duties of the treasurer's office has expanded dramatically just by technology and a lot of different other things here. I've never asked for a raise. I don't need a raise. I'm not asking today for a raise. However, you pass a legislation that presented I will get a raise. But at this point in time, it's not my intention to continue for 4 more years, or probably even 3 more years. I just feel that the current salary might not attract many people. Going back to the bus drivers, I guess, it's our new normal market of labor and what's out there, what people make, and the salaries of everybody has dramatically increased, and that's the way it is. So I was trying to initially throw a number in there, and that's why you see 2 different numbers, I believe, that you're replacing that with, or.
Yeah, we've cleaned that up.
Pardon me?
We cleaned that up.
Right, yeah, well, when the first package came out.
Yeah.
I have a succession plan, I have a position description, I have what I feel and expectations of a treasurer should be. Now, that's not necessarily treasurer of Lancaster, be a treasurer of the county or anywhere in governmental areas followed by the Ohio Revised Code. There are no posted qualifications for the job, as there is not for the auditor, as there isn't for the mayor.
Nor can we require them, right?
Nor can we require them, and I think to be a law director, you gotta be a lawyer. So other than that, there's not a whole lot of leeway, if you will. So I was trying to evaluate, how do we get this done? How do we attract somebody? It's not gonna be a full-time position. I don't think anybody's gonna work for those numbers. The hours of doing the job have increased 50% from when I started. If you look at everybody says it's part-time, but there's no elected position per Ohio Revised Code designated full-time, part-time. But we try to structure on a part-time basis at, we'll say, 20 hours a week. So I spent time doing a cost study, analysis, time study, and truly I'm putting in about 30 hours a week on average. If month end, beginning of the month, is a lot more time than maybe today, for instance. So you try to factor that into there, what you're gonna pay, what you're gonna do, and it's a challenge to come up with where we need to be to find a competent person. I would suggest it's probably gonna be more of a retired person, somebody that's did their career for 35, 40 years, and all of a sudden, they wanna keep working. So, and I've queried numerous people about this. They didn't have any interest. So, I'm not gonna get into names, I share some things with Tom. So I just feel it's important at my age and where I am in my life that we have a succession plan for this office. I know Tricia's worked for a succession plan. She's a lot younger than me. And the other department heads have done that. You'll go through the city, and we've got a lot of retirements coming up, and the mayor and the service safety director have worked very hard to identify potential candidates to take over these departments. And I think we're at a critical time in the city, and you recognize that, and I appreciate that. So that's kind of where I am. I could answer any questions. I know, Tom, I've shared some things with you. I need to update them a little bit.
Sure. Any questions for Treasurer Wolfinger? I mean, I wanted to give you the thought process. A couple things you have to understand here is he intends to work his way off of city health insurance, so part of his increase from 20,000 is that number. That was part of his compensation anyway, because he was receiving a benefit of about $9,000, so.
Yeah, thank you, that's a good point. The health insurance is roughly $9,500, give or take, single coverage. So 20, I mean, you're already at 30, so it's not like it's
Right.
a major
Right.
jump there. Now, there will be an offset from OPERS.
Right.
That 14%. But the other thing, I've also done the Lancaster Port Authority, and that's been an in-kind gratis deal, and that area has grown dramatically too. A lot of things we've done with economic development, which just look around, you see what we got going on.
Sure.
So I wouldn't expect the new treasurer to do that either.
Right.
So.
Questions for the treasurer?
I
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to state for the record that I've enjoyed working with all of you non-qualified people all these years. So, all the rest.
See what you got to
I'll
look
tell you what,
forward to.
this sounds more like a Saturday Night Live skit than a. Thanks, Rita. All right.
Prepared over there in the courts?
Hopefully you have as much fun as we do. All right, folks, so anyway, I'm asking for your consideration on this. If you have any questions, thoughts, whatnot, those should be directed to me, okay? And if you want to call me or put a full blast email to all of council, that's fine. But I want to give you the thought process behind that. Bob does have a kind of a time study that I'll share with you as well. I just need to kind of clean that up a little bit and shoot it out your way. So you'll get that from me as well as a budget bridge that I promised you earlier. So, seeing no further discussion, we will move on to 4621, and that is an ordinance to amend the municipal income tax split that Mayor Scheffler talked about earlier, which basically goes. Basically 93% of that first 1% goes to the general fund, 1% goes to parks, 1% to cemetery, and 5% to the 320 city capital improvement fund. So any questions on that? We will go full 3 readings on that one as well. All right, do we have any departmental updates this evening? Look at them race to the podium. Nope.
I just wanted to let you know that in conjunction with the United States Geological Survey Group, we have installed a stream gauge here in the city on the Hocking River at Columbus Street. And so we now can measure stream height. And you can find that information on the city webpage, on the floodplain page. And I have included the flood elevations that go along with that. So if you're looking for information or we get into some severe weather and you want to know, it's right there.
What was that called again? A
Stream gauge.
stream gauge. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you. All right.
Question,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Mrs. Bobbitt.
just real brief, how's that work when you say you've installed it? So you've put mechanisms in the stream?
It's a sonar reading, so it blasts down and picks up the stream elevation.
It's attached to the bridge.
Nice.
Yeah.
On a solid structure, and it is very accurate. It's very good in reading
Okay.
that height. So in a storm event, we'll be able to see firsthand what's there without going to the site.
Wonderful.
We had
And this will
one-
be on the web?
It's on
It's
the
on our
city
website.
webpage, it's on the USGS webpage. And we had one years and years ago, it got taken out by USGS, and so we've relied on the one down at Enterprise, which doesn't directly correlate with us because there's several large streams that come in between us and Enterprise. So we were very excited when Mike Nixon made all the arrangements for this. So when they came and said yes, they would install it.
Nice, thank you, very cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Linda?
Well, I was going to take the opportunity to talk about something while Judge Fields and Jackie Long were here, and then they left. I just want to give you a good news report. This is an example of what happens when we come together as a community. Earlier this year, there were nonprofits that were very concerned about the end of the eviction moratorium. The high number of people who were going to be evicted. And just people being evicted in general. With the tight housing market that we have, if you have an eviction on your record, you will not find a place to live. You will have a hard time finding a place to rent. And that's why we have a lot of people living outside. So we have a Fairfield County Housing Coalition. I happen to be the chair just by virtue of my position. And the coalition discussed, what can we do to mitigate, to decrease evictions. And we thought, well, let's write a letter to Judge Fields and see if we can get the courts involved. And just as I was drafting a letter and sending it around, because everyone was gonna sign it, someone saw Judge Fields and told him about this, and he said, when's your next meeting? And he came in person, and with Jackie, and sat around the table. We talked about the issues, and right there in the room, Community Action, Job and Family Services, they said, eviction court is Tuesdays at, 1:30, we will be there. Legal Services was there to work with people one-on-one. And, Community Action and Job and Family Services have funds to assist people. And so we're already decreasing the number of people that are being evicted and helping them and their landlords because we were just able to come together and make it happen. And that had a lot to do with the judge. So we can't do everything. We don't always do it right. But sometimes it actually works. And that's a good day.
Excellent.
I
Mrs.
do
Teener.
just have a question with all this. So what's the criteria for that? Because I know there's a lot of people out there that are not choosing to work, and they're making really good money, and they're just choosing not to pay their bills. So are they looking into that to see what their benefits had been, whether they just didn't pay their eviction, to pay their rent? I'm just asking.
I don't honestly know. I mean, that's a great question. What are the criteria for that rental assistance? But that would be a question for Community Action and Job and Family Services. Yeah.
Further questions? Very good, thank you. Any other departmental updates?
So I'd like to introduce our management team from Transit. Mr. Schoonover had asked that I brought them up here, and they thought I was going to spare them of that embarrassment, Councilman Stoughton, but so you will be kind and gracious to them.
They got to come to the mic.
always.
There's no getting out of that.
No, but that's a good point. Anyway, we're grateful for their efforts here, and Chaslyn Carter is our former assistant director, and she is working with my office co-worker, Michelle McCready, who is now there at Transit, both of them, and I'm grateful for their service and what they're doing. It's a trying time in the job market, of course, and we believe transit is necessary. It's an important thing for our community. You just ride any one of our buses and you'll come away and go, this is good what we're doing. And so I appreciate these two coming to the task. It's a tall order right now. Yes, they have to respond when there's an accident or any type of any incident that happens on the bus. And Chaslyn Carter and Michelle McCready, we just want to introduce them to you. Feel free if you have any other questions. Their department is part of the Public Works Committee that City Council has, which Corey is the chair of that committee at this time.
All right, so you each have a 3-minute speech, we're told, prepared. Who wants to go first?
I would like to say that there is an employee incentive program if you refer someone who gets hired as a part-time driver. And that is good for all city employees, including yourselves.
Wow, thank you.
So,
Yes, nice to meet everyone. Thank you, Paul, for your nice words. And I just want to let everyone know that Michelle and I are working very hard, and we've seen a lot of positive growth in the last few weeks, and we're going to continue day by day just to get everything back on track. So,
Well, excellent. Thank you for all you do, and welcome aboard, and go hire some drivers.
Right.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Any questions? I'm sorry. Any questions for I shouldn't let them go that easy. All right. Thank you, ladies. All right. Any other departmental updates? Nobody left. So, all right. I will now defer to President Poole for tonight's meeting prep.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We do have one resolution remaining, 131-21, to approve the appointment of James Young as Assistant Prosecutor. This coming through law. I'll turn it over to Mr. Hall, who I'm sure is going to throw it to.
We're going to ask for a suspension tonight, and I am going to put it to Robert Ullum,
Law Director and soon-to-be Judge.
Exactly, yes.
Qualified Robert.
New job and a new name. That's, you can't beat that.
Let's have
Other
it.
than 18 and breathing, right? All right, no offense. As you know, the ORC requires that I make the appointments of assistant prosecuting attorneys, but City Council has approval with regard to those appointments. So without further ado, I am going to have our newest assistant prosecuting attorney, James Eli Young, come up to the podium there and introduce himself to you all, and feel free to hit him up with questions. Not about your speeding tickets, though.
Well, never mind then.
So I actually found out late last week from Randall that I actually had to come up here and speak. I thought I was just shaking hands. So I thought I'd start with a little bit of my background. I am a City of Columbus native, grew up in the south end of Columbus, Parsons Avenue kid. Worked in the factory for 4 years, and I had enough of that. And so I went to undergrad at OSU, majored in forestry and wildlife. Actually, a dream of mine was always to be in Southeast Ohio, always. And so I got to live that dream for about one season, running around the hills of Hocking and chasing turkeys. And it was the greatest job ever, but it didn't pay much, and they got rid of me after 6 months. So with that, I had joined the military back in 2003, post 9/11, a lot of patriotism back then. I ended up getting deployed in 2008. I served in Kuwait for 4 months, Iraq for 4 months, and then back home. Well, what I found out is when I got home in 2008, the economy took a dump. And so here I was a college graduate. I had veterans preference, and I couldn't find a job. And so it was my mother-in-law who said, you know what, become an attorney. I said, I can't become an attorney. I'm a forestry guy. And she said, they don't care. Just apply. So 2010, I applied to Capital Law School. I actually got in. But at the same time, I got a job as a meter reader with the City of Columbus. And what I found out was walking 12 miles a day and then sitting through law lectures in the evening was very difficult. So I was in law school for about a week and a half before I withdrew. And then in 2012 or 13, I ended up getting a job, another great job with the City of Columbus as a water protection specialist. And so if you don't know what that is, it's a glorified park ranger, but I was not commissioned officer. But I worked at Hoover Reservoir in Westerville, I worked at Griggs, and I worked at O'Shaughnessy, and then we actually had a upground reservoir that nobody really knows about that was built recently. So I was quasi-law enforcement. I went around enforcing boating laws on Hoover Reservoir. I patrolled the park grounds. And it's funny, she was talking about the river creek gauges. Part of my job was going on the USGS website and monitoring that during flood stages. And then we'd radio down to the Dublin water plant and let them know when they had to release water downstream so that we didn't flood out areas. So I'm actually quite familiar with the USGS water gauges that she's talking about. So with that, in 2013, as I was sitting in my patrol truck on a January, actually 2012, in a January snowstorm, nobody at the park, I thought, you know what, I could probably go back to law school. You know, I'm sitting in my patrol truck, I gotta read something, want a law book. So in 2012, I applied for Capital again, got accepted, and I was ordered to, or I was scheduled to start in August of 2013. During that whole time, I was still a reservist with the military. And ironically, I had switched rates with the military, and you always hear these stories, but I never really met anyone that actually experienced this until me. Part of my contract with the military was I had to go down to Fort Leonard Wood and train on my job for 3 months. And I kept struggling to get that booked through the Navy career counselor. He calls me, I think it was June, and he says, I got you in. You can go to Fort Leonard Wood. You leave tomorrow. And I said, you're joking. He said, no. He goes, you got two options. You either go tomorrow or we separate you for administration purposes. He said, it's not a dishonorable, but it's an other, or it's a other than honorable. I said, well, I don't want a dishonorable. So I went, ran up to my work that day, said, I'm leaving tomorrow, went off to Fort Leonard Wood, and then I actually was a week late getting into law school. So I got home from Fort Leonard Wood, jumped right into law school, and then I did that for 3 years, and then in 2016 I got deployed again to Afghanistan. Another funny story with that. I was on City of Columbus insurance. When you get deployed, you train for 2 months, and we trained in Fort Bragg and in Virginia. Make a long story short, we switched insurance, and when my wife transitioned from city insurance to TRICARE, the federal government insurance, they made her take the generic birth control, and I found out 3 weeks after I deployed that she was pregnant, which was a blessing because it got me home a month early. So when the rest of my crew was over there for, I think, 9 months, I got back at about 7.5 months. So I made it back in time for the birth. Finished up my last year in law school, took the bar, and I was working for Conrad Wood, which is a local, maybe most of you guys may know him, Aaron Conrad and Scott Wood. I was working for them as a law clerk. Right before I took the bar, they extended an offer to me. Fortunately, I passed the bar, and they hired me on as an attorney, and I worked for them for the last 3.5, 4 years. And then when this position came open, I applied, and I think part of the reason Randall hired me was just to stick it to Scott and Aaron a little bit. So, but in any regard, a lot of people ask me, why did you switch, or why did you, and I say, look, I was a city employee, I was a state employee, I was a federal employee. I got a lot of OPERS time. I have a lot of benefits and stuff that I had through the government. So having a chance to get back to the government side of things was something that myself and my wife was looking forward to. So I don't think I really left anything out, but that pretty much brings me to today.
Very good. Well, thank you for being here, Mr. Young. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Melody.
And you go by Eli, right?
I do, yeah. So it's a big state of confusion for a lot of people because growing up, I was always Eli. My grandfather loved the name Eli, and so my real name's James Eli Young, but friends call me Eli, and then some people call me James at work, and sometimes it's confusing. But
You forgot to mention your pilot's license.
Yeah, so I'm hyper, I guess. I don't know. I got all kinds of stuff like that. I got scuba diving certs, and I don't know. Yeah, so I took pilot's license down in Vinton County with an instructor down there. And I got to be honest, when I started law school, I had to kind of give up flying because I just didn't have the time for it.
It's expensive, too.
Yeah, well, that too.
Mr. James.
Eli, can I ask one quick question? Have you ever prosecuted any case at all yet?
I have, yeah. So I've been on for 2 weeks, and honestly, people ask me if it's any different. I went from this table to this table, and so all my prior experience has been defense, but I've jumped right in on the caseload, and this week I'm kind of handling all my own cases with the help of Mr. Klemp.
One last question. You're not a paratrooper by any chance where you jump out of a perfectly good airplane?
No, believe it or not, I was Navy, but I never got on a ship. They called us sand sailors. I was a construction battalion. We were an expeditionary force, which is why we had a 3-in-1 rotation. So I was home for 3 years, away for a year, home for 3 years, and away for a year. So the only time I actually got out to blue water was never. Yeah.
Very good. All right, well, thank you for being here, Mr. Young. We will, pretty early in the meeting, work our way through this. We are asking for suspension tonight. Mr. Hall as the sponsor, Mr. McDaniel as the second. If you want to stick around and see if it passes, we invite you to do so. I think your chances are pretty good. And then after that, you're more than welcome to go if you'd like. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your qualifications.
Yes. All right, that's all I have. I'll turn it back to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are there any other items for finance? Yes, sir.
Got just one more. This has to do with the third reading of temporary resolution 121-21, and we're going to probably put that on the table tonight, and I'd like to have Denise give us a little explanation as to why.
So on the Lawrence Street project, we ran into this new thing for us related to special inspections for the building permit. And as we try and work through on the Lawrence Street project, I want to make sure that it's not going to change the engineering contract on the Upper Hocking project. So I'm asking you to table it for tonight. Arcadis has assured me that it's included in the Upper Hocking contract, and so these numbers shouldn't change. I just want to get it all pinned down and figured out before you pass this, so I don't have to come back.
Thank you very much. All right, so we'll plan to table 121-21 tonight.
Any other items for finance?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. I already turned it back to you. Sorry.
Just a glory hole, aren't you? All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn. Second.
And we have a second. We are adjourned, Mr. President, 7:05.
Regular meeting, Lancaster City Council will begin promptly at 7:10.
Life is unpredictable. That's why estate planning is important. Estate planning provides you comfort and peace of mind knowing that you're taking care of your loved ones and ensuring your legacy lives on just as you envisioned. You lived a life that is beautifully and uniquely yours. You deserve an estate planning attorney who understands that and creates a plan as unique as you and in the best interest of your loved ones. You deserve the local, trusted, experienced attorneys at Dagger Law.
There is no place like Lancaster, Ohio, and Fairfield County, and like you, I am proud to call them home. As a longtime resident of Lancaster and graduate of Lancaster High School, this community is important to me, and I want to provide superior customer service, professionalism, integrity, and honesty at the Connor Insurance Agency. I am committed to supporting local programs and projects through my volunteer work and board membership with several organizations. It has been a great honor to work with all the first responders throughout Lancaster, Fairfield County, and the state of Ohio to put on Kids and Cops Day, to be a part of Shop with a Cop alongside the Lancaster Police Department and JFS, and to help Lancaster Public Education Foundation raise funds to support our local public schools and teachers. These men and women work hard to protect and support our community, and I would like to take this moment to say thank you for all they do. My goal as a business owner and insurance agent is to provide my clients with the most appropriate services and coverage for their needs at a competitive rate. As an independent agent, I have several carriers to choose from so I can customize your insurance coverage to fit your needs and desires. I strive to make sure there are no gaps in your coverage that could be harmful, and just as important, that you are not overinsured. I look forward to serving your insurance needs now and in the future. At Connor Insurance, we are here to serve you by protecting what is important to you. Please contact my office at 740-654-2848 for a full list of services and carriers, or visit my website, ConnorInsuranceAgency.com.
the Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of Lancaster City Council. Please join me in a word of prayer. Father, we are thankful for this day and your blessings, thankful for all that you do. As we enter into this season of Thanksgiving, we continue to give you praise as you continue to bless us. May you help us tonight in all that is before us. May we rightly work through what it is that we have to do. May we rightly represent those who have put us here. We'll continue to give you the glory. In Jesus' name, amen. I hereby call this meeting of Lancaster City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Treasurer Wolfinger, would you mind to grab Miss Bobbitt? I think she may be out there having a conversation. And Mr. James. Oh, yeah, Tom doesn't too. And Randall, grab them all.
That's probably the conversation.
Eli's here.
I'm not gonna raise for that either.
Got Eli here, though.
We're about to send the police chief.
And we could have sent the sergeant of arms.
I gave him the night off.
Oh, did you?
All right, well, skip Miss Bobbitt and let's work through the,
Oh, you already did?
Mrs. Kreitz. Here. Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. James.
Here.
Mr. Matlin.
Here.
Mr. McDaniel.
Here.
Mr. Schoonover.
Here.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
the record reflect that all of us are here, though Miss Bobbitt is indisposed at the moment. We'll be here very soon. Can't really go on without her.
She's out there talking.
I know she is, and we can't, someone else is gonna have to second this stuff.
Now
until she
he's
gets
out
here.
there talking to her.
Oh, now you lost
Now Wolfinger's out there talking to her. This is like Saturday Night Live skit.
Interacting with.
Hey, all right, there she is.
Unqualified.
That's right. I just do mean non-qualified.
And that wasn't a pretty sight.
Great clarification. Great clarification.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Here.
Very good. Reading and disposing of the journal.
Email dated November 3rd, 2021 regarding council salary submitted by Mrs. Teener. Oh, excuse me, the journal. I'm jumping ahead.
That's all right.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated October 25th, 2021.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
Second.
A motion and a second to receive and file the journal. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports of city officials.
Email dated November 3rd, 2021 regarding council salary submitted by Mrs. Teener. Email dated November 3rd, 2021 regarding the 2022 city budget submitted by Mr. Stoughton. Series of emails dated November 8th, 2021 regarding legislation change submitted by Mr. Stoughton. Email dated November 8th, 2021 regarding finance agenda submitted by Mr. Stoughton. And finally, an email dated November 8th, 2021 regarding the IT telecom cancellation of meetings submitted by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
Second.
A motion and a second to receive and file reports of city officials. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any communications?
There are two, and I'll probably butcher this name. Notice the legislative authority of a new liquor license to Tequila El Tapido LLC located at 1021 North Memorial Drive, Suite 3, Lancaster, Ohio, 43130, submitted by the Ohio Division of Liquor Control. And a notice to the legislative authority of a stock liquor license change to Cherry Street Pub LLC LLC, doing business as Cherry Street Pub, located at 202 North Cherry Street, the first floor, basement, and patio, Lancaster, Ohio, 43130, submitted by the Ohio Divisional Liquor Control. That's it. Okay.
Mr.
Barely.
President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the communications.
Second?
A motion and a second to receive and file communications. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have no special presentations or awards tonight. Are there any petitions or memorials?
There are none to be presented.
I see a couple of taxpayers out there. Do you gentlemen have any interest in addressing city council this evening? No? Okay, well, then we'll move on. Thank you guys for being here. Are there reports of standing committees?
There are 3. Finance Committee meeting dated November the 8th, 2021, submitted by Mr. Stoughton. Public Works Committee meeting dated October 8th, 2021, submitted by Mr. Schoonover. And finally, the Service Committee meeting dated November 1st, 2021, submitted by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of standing committees.
Second?
A motion and a second to receive and file reports of standing committees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are the reports of special committees?
There are none to be
We
presented.
have no public hearings this evening, so we'll move to the reading of resolutions, beginning with the third reading of temporary resolution 121-21.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to enter into an engineering agreement for the Upper Hocking Water Pollution Control Fund Expansion Project Design Construction Administration, offered by Mr. James, seconded by Mr. Hall.
Mr. James.
Thank you, President Dole. I would like to, at this time, to make a motion that council place on the table temporary resolution number 121-21.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to place upon the table temporary resolution 121-21. Motion to table is not debatable. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 121-21 is placed upon the table, 9-0. We now have second reading of temporary resolution 127-21.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an agreement for inspection services for the Wiley Road Water Loop Project and to approve the issuance of any then and now certificates for any invoices related to the contract for the months of October and November of 2021, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Hall.
Mr. James.
Thank you, President Dole. At this time, I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 127-21.
Second?
A motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 127-21. Discussion on the motion to suspend, Mr. James.
Just briefly, as a reminder for everyone, this particular agreement will help get the inspection services that we need for the Wiley Road Loop Project water line. And as we've discussed in the previous, not tonight in the Finance Committee, but the previous one.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. James.
Thank you, President Dole. At this time, I would like to make a motion that council pass and gross and enter upon our written record temporary resolution numbered 127-21.
Second?
A motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 127-21. Discussion, Mr. James.
Nothing further, thank you.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 127-21 passes 9-0. We now have first reading on a series of resolutions, beginning with temporary resolution 131-21.
A resolution to approve the appointment of James E. Young as Assistant Prosecutor in the Law Director's Office, offered by Mr. Hall and seconded by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Hall.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 131-21.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 131-21. Discussion, Mr. Hall.
I'll wait.
Discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. Hall.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council pass in gross and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 131-21.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 131-21. Discussion, Mr. Hall.
Yes, Mr. President,
Law Director Alum introduced our new Assistant Prosecutor in the Finance meeting. We're the Law Director's office is staffing up. It looks like a great hire, and I think we're ready to move forward.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to pass? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 131-21 passes 9-0. Congratulations and
Thank you
welcome
for
to the
saving me
city.
from an awkward Tuesday.
Yeah, that would be yes. Congratulations. And thank you for being here this evening. You, of course, are welcome to go at any time. Thanks. Have a good day. And then there were two.
I think they're gonna stick it out.
I think they're going to stick with us, yep. Temporary Resolution 132-21.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to accept a Build Ohio grant and to execute contracts as required, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. James.
Thank you, President Dole. At this time, I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of 132-21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of Temporary Resolution 132-21. Discussion, Mr. James.
Briefly, this gives us the opportunity to accept $950,000 plus as a grant from the state of Ohio to help us with the Valley Road Water Loop Project.
Yes, please. There we are. Very good. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. James.
Thank you, President Dole. At this time, I would like to make a motion that council pass and gross and enter upon a written record temporary resolution numbered 132-21.
Second.
A motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record Temporary Resolution 132-21. Further discussion, Mr. James?
Nothing further, thank you.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 132-21 passes 9-0. Temporary Resolution 133-21.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into contracts for mowing and other landscape maintenance services for the city cemeteries, offered by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Mr. James.
Mr. Schoonover.
First of two readings, please.
First of two readings on Temporary Resolution 133-21. Temporary Resolution 134-21.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for the inspection services, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. James.
Thank you, President Dole. This is the first of three readings.
First of three readings on Temporary Resolution 134-21. Temporary Resolution 135-21.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an engineering contract, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Hall.
Mr. James.
Thank you, President Dole. This is the first of three readings.
First of three readings on Temporary Resolution 135-21. Temporary Resolution 136-21.
A resolution to make appropriations for the current 2022 budget, expenses and other expenditures of the City of Lancaster, State of Ohio for the fiscal year 2022, and to establish line item transfer authority for departments, offered by Mrs. Bobbitt and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Thank you. As we heard from the mayor and from Tom, and then from many others around the room here tonight, the mayor let us know that in this budget, we have a new environmental engineer. These were some of the things that were highlighted. We have the $150,000 that we've talked about before for sidewalks. We have another code enforcement officer. Thank you, Corey, because we learned that he suggested that. I think some of us others have suggested it also. We're still waiting for information from the park board, so this budget will change. As Tom offered in the finance committee meeting, and he might have something else that he wants to add here too, he is building an Excel bridge for us, and it's a lot of work for him, but he's going to get it to us as soon as possible because he knows that we all love to look at that Excel spreadsheet. It helps us out tremendously. Also in this budget, there's $3.1 million from the budget last year for safety forces. And thanks to the voters here in Lancaster, Ohio, This is something that they wanted. This is going to help out our safety forces tremendously. Tom, do you have anything else that you might want to add to?
You summed that up rather nicely. Well done.
This is the first reading of 3 readings. The mayor told us to give him any questions that we have, to make certain that we call him. Tom is a wealth of information. Give Tom an email if you have any questions. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Ms. Bobbitt. That'll be first of 3 readings then on temporary resolution 136-21. Temporary resolution 137-21.
A resolution to create a new fund for environmental engineer, Fund 7030, and to set up revenue and expense accounts beginning with the 2022 budget. Offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of Resolution Temporary 13721, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 137-21. Discussion, Mr. Stoughton?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This resolution creates the Environmental Engineering Fund for the new function that is in alignment with all the new obviously projects we'll be doing. So this creates the revenue and expense accounts for each for the 2022 budget.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to suspend? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 9-0. Mr. Stoughton?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council pass and gross and enter upon the written record. Resolution Temporary 13721, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 137-21. Further discussion, Mr. Stoughton?
No, thank you.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 137-21 passes 9-0. Are there any further resolutions to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we'll move to the reading of ordinances, beginning with the first reading of temporary ordinance 39-21.
An ordinance to establish the benefits, titles, and compensation for the information technology administrator of the clerk of court employed by the city of Lancaster, Ohio, commencing the first pay period of 2022, and to declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Stoughton?
Thank you, Mr. President. The next 7 ordinances are pay ordinances for the 2022 year. As we discussed earlier in finance, if you have any questions about any of those, please forward those to myself and/or the mayor. You will see that we will ask for the first of 3 readings on all 7 of those. So first of 3 on 3921, please.
Very good. First of 3 readings then on temporary ordinance 39-21. Temporary ordinance 40-21.
An ordinance to establish the benefits, titles, and compensation for Fairfield County Municipal Court management and professional personnel employed by the city of Lancaster, Ohio for the year 2022 and to declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. Stoughton?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of 3 readings, please.
First of 3 readings on temporary ordinance 40-21. Temporary ordinance 41-21.
An ordinance to establish benefits, titles, and compensation for Fairfield County Municipal Court judicial and probation personnel employed by the city of Lancaster, Ohio for the year 2022 and to declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Stoughton?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of 3 readings, please.
First of 3 readings on temporary ordinance 41-21. Temporary ordinance 42-21.
An ordinance to establish benefits, titles, and compensation for those employees who are not members of the organized bargaining units employed by the city of Lancaster, Ohio for the year 2022 and to declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. Stoughton?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of 3 readings, please.
First of 3 readings on temporary ordinance 42-21. Temporary ordinance 43-21.
An ordinance to establish the benefits, titles, and compensation for management and professional personnel employed by the city of Lancaster, Ohio for the year 2022 and to declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Stoughton?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of 3 readings, please.
First of 3 readings on temporary ordinance 43-21. Temporary ordinance 44-21.
An ordinance to establish benefits, titles, and compensation for transit personnel employed by the city of Lancaster, Ohio for the year 2022 and to declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. Stoughton?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of 3 readings, please.
First of 3 readings on temporary ordinance 44-21. Temporary ordinance 45-21.
An ordinance to establish the compensation for council president, council members, council clerk, and treasurer for the term commencing payroll 1 of 2022 and to declare an emergency. offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of three readings, please.
First three readings on temporary ordinance 45-21, temporary ordinance 46-21.
An ordinance to amend Lancaster Codified Ordinance Part 1 Administrative Code, Title 9 Taxation, Chapter 183 Municipal Income Tax, effective January 1st, 2018, Section 183.013, allocation of funds of the codified ordinances of the City of Lancaster and to declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's the first of three readings, please.
First three readings on temporary ordinance 46-21. Are there any further ordinances to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we'll move to tabled legislation. It is possible, I don't know when Board of Elections is going to certify, I haven't heard that date yet, but as soon as they do, we'll be able to take action on temporary ordinance 17-21 because of the successful passage of the Parks Levy. So congratulations to those who had part in that, and once the election is certified, we will move forward with removing that from the table and taking action. Is there further activity on any tabled legislation this evening? If not, we will move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business tonight? Is there any new business tonight? If not, we'll ask that the clerk read our announcement of scheduled meetings.
The next scheduled meeting is November 22nd. The meeting following is December 13th, both meetings here at 6:30 p.m. in council chambers. Upcoming committee meetings for the next 30 days. Water pollution, November 10th at 8 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room. Law, November 10th at 9:30 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room. Economic Development, November 18th at 7:30 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room. Cancel, the IT telecom meeting is canceled for November 19th. Finance, November 22nd at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. And let's see, service, December 3rd at 7:30 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room. Code enforcement, December 6th at 8 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room. Water pollution control, December 8th at 8 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room.
Thank you very much. Are there any bills?
We have a bill payable to PNC for services in the MNCO paper for publication of legislation in the amount of $539.20.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to pay the bill.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pay the bill. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there a need for an executive session this evening? If not, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion to adjourn.
And I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Please remember to sign your legislation. Thank you all very much.
Life is unpredictable. That's why estate planning is important. Estate planning provides you comfort and peace of mind knowing that you're taking care of your loved ones and ensuring your legacy lives on just as you envisioned. You lived a life that is beautifully and uniquely yours. You deserve an estate planning attorney who understands that and creates a plan as unique as you and in the best interest of your loved ones. You deserve the local, trusted, experienced attorneys at Dagger Law.
There is no place like Lancaster, Ohio, and Fairfield County, and like you, I am proud to call them home. As a longtime resident of Lancaster and graduate of Lancaster High School, this community is important to me, and I want to provide superior customer service, professionalism, integrity, and honesty at the Connor Insurance Agency. I am committed to supporting local programs and projects through my volunteer work and board membership with several organizations. It has been a great honor to work with all the first responders throughout Lancaster, Fairfield County, and the state of Ohio to put on Kids and Cops Day, to be a part of Shop with a Cop alongside the Lancaster Police Department and JFS. and to help Lancaster Public Education Foundation raise funds to support our local public schools and teachers. These men and women work hard to protect and support our community, and I would like to take this moment to say thank you for all they do. My goal as a business owner and insurance agent is to provide my clients with the most appropriate services and coverage for their needs at a competitive rate. As an independent agent, I have several carriers to choose from so I can customize your insurance coverage to fit your needs and desires. I strive to make sure there are no gaps in your coverage that could be harmful, and just as important, that you are not overinsured. I look forward to serving your insurance needs now and in the future. At Connor Insurance, we are here to serve you by protecting what is important to you. Please contact my office at 740-654-2848 for a full list of services and carriers, or visit my website, ConnorInsuranceAgency.com.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.